It's UpFront with Linda. I'm Linda Quern, your host, and today my guest is Chanel Prunier, who's from Renew Mass Coalition, and we're going to be discussing the bathroom bill today. I guess it's bathroom HB 1577. Is that right?
Yeah. Actually, it's got a new number. The number that they just passed it under in the Senate is, I believe, 735, and it has a new number out in the House as well.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So,
I know that's moving along quite fast.
It is moving quickly. So.
So before we get to that, I'm just going to have you tell the audience who you are.
Okay.
So if you could just give a little background of yourself and how you got into the Mass Coalition, the Renew Mass Coalition, and then we'll just talk about some of the things that you do and how we got to the bathroom bill.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me, Linda. I appreciate you having me on the show so I can talk to the folks in Bourne about this important issue. I'm a lifelong Massachusetts resident in my 30s, and I live in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. I've been involved in a variety of causes and issues over the years. I serve as executive director of the Renew Massachusetts Coalition. I also serve as the national committee woman of the Massachusetts Republican Party, and mainly my career has focused on increasing our Republican and conservative representation on Beacon Hill. So.
That's quite a task.
Yeah, but it's also a lot of fun. I woke up one day and realized I was an optimist. So.
You have to be doing that.
Absolutely. And the Renew Massachusetts Coalition is a center-right issue advocacy group. We're focused on a variety of issues, but really we're a group of people who are united in the opinion that Massachusetts has just gone too far to the left, that the pendulum has swung too far the wrong way, and we need to bring some common sense back to both our fiscal policy and our social policy, which obviously leads us into opposing legislation like the bathroom bill, which just frankly on its face doesn't make sense for the average citizen.
So you're doing some other bills right now too. You're against Common Core.
Yeah, there's a variety of things. The left-wing liberals on Beacon Hill, they definitely come up with all kinds of bad ideas. We are opposed to the implementation of the federal Common Core standards that is going on in Massachusetts right now. We're in favor of returning to the pre-Common Core, pre-2010 standards, which made Massachusetts the best in the nation in terms of our test scores and our student performance. We really don't believe that the federal government should be dumbing Massachusetts students down with standards that are inferior to the standards that we have before. So we're opposed to Common Core. In addition to that, we're opposing a piece of legislation called the Trust Act, which essentially Massachusetts has a number of cities which are sanctuary cities where the local municipality does not communicate and cooperate with the enforcement of federal immigration law as a practice, and we believe that the Trust Act, which would create that policy statewide for all municipalities, is really the wrong way to go. We think that we should enforce our immigration law. So those are two topics in addition to the bathroom bill, which we're here to talk about today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming. I'm not quite sure when this bathroom bill started. I know we already have a discrimination law in place, and that was passed, I think, a couple of years ago.
2011, yes. And so that specifically prohibited discrimination against transgender individuals. It has resulted in the ability for a number of them filing claims with the Mass Commission against discrimination. And it's one of the reasons many people are arguing that we don't need the current piece of legislation because discrimination is already prohibited under the law against people who are transgendered or that have gender identity issues. So this bill would specifically expand that law to include what's called public accommodations, which are specifically restrooms, locker rooms, facilities that are currently lawfully sex-segregated changing rooms. And really it presents a threat to the safety and privacy of women who have an expectation that they're only going to have other women in these changing facilities or in the locker room or restroom. So.
when you were talking about the bill itself, I did get a copy of the discrimination bill, and that seems to cover everything. And I did look at the new bill that's proposed, and it seems pretty benign. It doesn't go into a lot of details, but
it's very vague, and that's, I think, one of the main objections. The press conference that we had the other day that we can talk about a little bit more, but one of the attorneys who was present, a young lady named Bridget Fay, talked about the thing that concerns her most about the bill is how subjective and how vague it is. Gender identity is not well defined. It's defined as how you feel in terms of what you feel like your gender may be on a particular day. There's no hard and fast requirement that you're having hormone treatment or under the care of a psychiatrist or a doctor in terms of your transition. There's no way to prove you are there for a lawful purpose as opposed to a nefarious purpose. And so, one of the things that Bridget has brought up, and other attorneys have brought up over the years about this piece of legislation, is that there's no real hard set fast definition that can be used to deter people who are misusing the law. It's simply how you feel, and you cannot prove how someone feels.
And this law has passed in other states already, so we've seen some of the effects.
Yeah, and we've seen some of the backlash. I think one of the these sort of successes in fighting back against this sort of policy is the current boycott against Target, and how over 1 million people have signed a petition saying that they don't want this to be the policy at the restrooms and changing areas in the dressing rooms at a Target. And they've seen they've lost billions of dollars just with their attitude of political correctness and saying, no, this is the policy we're going to have. And what this legislation does is says to businesses like Target or small mom and pop consignment shops or gyms or whatever, is that you can't set this policy yourself. You have to have this policy. And if you question someone the wrong way, you're committing a civil rights violation. Or if a well-meaning dad stops a man from entering a lady's restroom after his daughter's gone in, that father could be subject to fines. And so it's a scary piece of legislation that we just think totally lacks common sense.
I've read that before, that's one of the fears, that once you get a bill like this passed, then you also have the fines and the persecution of people. And,
the bill literally specifies prison, up to a year in prison for somebody that denies access to a transgender person. Right.
And this wouldn't be just transgender, like you said. It's however you feel that day.
Right.
So you could feel like a man one day and a woman the next, or you could just decide whatever you want.
Or you could be exploiting the law. I mean, I don't think anyone believes that somebody who has a sincere belief that their gender is not what they were born with, I don't believe those people, nobody thinks they want to hurt anyone, nobody thinks they want to misuse the policy, but there are more people out there who than there are transgender people who have, might be looking to commit crimes that might be looking to prey on young women, and that brings us to the young lady, another young lady that we had at the press conference, who was a sexual assault survivor who had worked at a YMCA, who said, I can't have this kind of policy because it will expose women to being abused.
Right. And she said she went through one trauma already, because I was there on Wednesday, that it was just too much for her to even think of a man being in the locker room.
Right.
So, and I've also done a little more reading, and I've read that 1 out of 4 women is either raped or molested or has gone through some kind of experience like that already. Yeah. So this would open it up. Even more.
Re-traumatize those individuals, and when you could, simply create a policy that doesn't allow for that accommodates folks. I think everybody wants to accommodate transgender individuals in some way, but in a way that also protects the safety and privacy and rights of women who whether they've experienced assault or not. To prevention in and of itself is a huge huge issue with it when it comes to this, and making sure that we do everything that we can to protect people from being assaulted. So.
Especially young girls.
Right. Who
5-6-year-old girls going into a ladies' room, they don't always expect to see a man exposing himself or something like that in the bathroom. And like you said, you have a lot of people who would take advantage of that situation. They may not even have an identity crisis. Or,
Right, and it would be very tough to tell them to leave.
Right.
Yeah, you know, and police would say, "Oh, I'm not sure if I question this person, am I going to be charged with a crime?" Business owners would start to say, "Oh, well, if I don't do something, then someone could get hurt. But if I do something, then I could be fined." What do they do in those circumstances? Because there's no clear definition of what it means to be transgendered within this law.
Now, the day after the press release, the Senate took a vote.
Yes, the Senate did pass the legislation. Your state senator, I was very happy to see, stood up against the left-wing nonsense and voted against the legislation. He also sponsored a great amendment that would have said for locker rooms and changing spaces that don't have privacy dividers, then this wouldn't apply, and that those individuals would have to use the facility consistent with their anatomy. And so I think he was trying to strike a compromise and trying to do something to protect women, and you know, even just to carve out a little small space within this law of some common sense. And it was unfortunately rejected by the Senate. It's a very liberal bunch that we have up there right now, unfortunately. But I applaud Senator DiMacedo for his vote and for his thoughtfulness on the issue.
And I saw on your website there were 4, I guess, who voted against the bill. Do you want to say? Do you remember who they are? Senator
DiMacedo, Senator Ryan Fatman, Senator Don Humison, and Minority Leader Bruce Tarr. They all, I think, did a nice job explaining why this is not about discrimination. It's about the safety and privacy of women, and making sure really that everybody's rights are protected, and that nobody is put in a situation where they would be where their safety might be jeopardized.
So. It was amazing to me that 33 people, 33 senators voted for that bill. It just totally amazes me.
Yeah, it's unfortunate the direction of the Democratic Party in our state on some issues like this. It's really amazing. You would think, why are we even taking this up? I mean,
I know.
Why do we need a provision? It's kind of a solution in search of a problem on this issue, and that there are so many other things that we could be talking about as a Commonwealth, and that we could be passing legislation related to, and to say, well, we want to make sure that men can go to the ladies' room. I don't think it comes to the top of the policy agenda of most citizens in Massachusetts. So it's really unfortunate that this is something that they've decided to pursue. And I hope, you know, they say the House is going to take it up at some point, but hopefully they will find other things to do with their time and our tax dollars.
Now, do you know when they might be taking that up?
It's still somewhat vague. The latest I read this morning was that the speaker was hoping to take it up sometime before mid-June, and so that would be within the next month or so. But the legislature is funny in that they often, their timetables on different things change very rapidly. Sometimes things get moved up, sometimes they get moved back. And so who knows when we might see the corresponding legislation in the House. But I do think it will be different than the Senate. The Senate has tacked on an emergency preamble. They don't have that would make the bill effective immediately, which is difficult because how do you issue guidelines? How do you tell business owners, concerned parents, if you just snap your fingers and suddenly this is law? I think we're going to have a lot of unfortunate mishaps where well-meaning people don't understand exactly what's going on, and government's not exactly sure how to administrate it because it's so vague.
Well, I would think that some of the places like these gyms, where they have different facilities for men and women and different locker rooms, that all of a sudden they would have to accommodate both sexes in those areas, I would assume that some people would just stop going,
Yeah,
and it would hurt their businesses.
Particularly if you belong to a Curves or a
Right.
workout place that it caters specifically to women. Well, you're there because you don't want to go to the gym with men. You're there because you want to go to the gym with other women, and suddenly if there are men, it sort of defeats the purpose.
Right. I could just see a lot of problems ahead, and in the schools as well.
Yes, yes.
I know there's some principals who have already said that they're not going to follow the guidelines, or they don't think it's safe enough to do that.
Right, and they have to weigh those concerns. They have to say, you know, we know our student body, and we know what our students are going to maturely handle and what they're not. And I think it asks a lot of our young people. They already have so many stresses when it comes to
I know.
you know, schoolwork and fitting in and social media and all kinds of things. To suddenly say, oh, now there's boys in the girls' locker room is it's going to be quite interesting if it goes and becomes law. So.
Now, to me, this just seems so outrageous, you know. But then I hear of parents who are actually raising their kids to be non-gender.
Oh, wow.
And you know, dressing boys as girls, or not making, you know, not calling them he or she for the first 5 years of their lives, you know, that kind of thing, so that they're not choosing one over the other.
Yeah.
To me, a few years ago, that would have been child abuse, but now it seems like that you know, this is okay. And we have to accommodate all these people with these kinds of ideas.
Yeah, well, and where do you draw the line? Because on the one hand, I'm not a parent myself, but I feel that at the end of the day, the person that's going to have, you know, hopefully the most regard for the well-being of children is parents and not government. But then you hear of situations like that, and you say, well, at what point do you step in and say, you know, this is you know, damaging to these children? You know, I think, like I said, this legislation in and of itself is sort of a solution without a problem, and it's trying to sort of expand this idea on a greater scale than rather than a parent here or a parent there. So.
Now, there were a few other representatives at the State House the other day.
Yes.
Chanel O'Connell.
Yeah, Shauna O'Connell. She gave a great talk about her own daughters and how she, you know, would not want to let them go unattended, and how she would fear for their safety if this were to pass. And I think, you know, she's going to continue to fight the legislation in the House. I think she'll continue to assist with exposing what's going on Beacon Hill, as she's done at a variety of fronts. Whether it was, whether it's, I know she had been a strong supporter of protecting children against sexual assault, you know, over the years in a variety of different ways and different pieces of legislation. And she's also done a lot of work on fiscal policy relative to fighting EBT fraud and opposing the gas tax hike. And, you know, she's been a great legislator to work with, who, again, just brings a lot more common sense to Beacon Hill. And I think if she were leading the charge, she'd have different legislation that they would be taking up, rather than, you know, who goes in which bathroom. So.
And Jeff Dale, too, is a great supporter and representative of Lions. So there are some really great supporters, and we thank them for that.
Yes.
I know you also have flyers that you've been
distributing. And you know, a lot of our grassroots supporters have distributed them at soccer games to fellow parents, you know, at the mall, after school, at churches, at a variety of different locations, just trying to spread the word and let parents know that this is going on, that this will impact them. You know, women at gyms, there's a lot of, you know, different people that this could potentially harm. So.
And I've volunteered to pass them out myself.
Oh, wonderful.
So I have done that. I spent a Sunday morning, you know, going to churches and it seems successful, so I hope people don't mind when they come out of church to see a bill like this, and it's just not the bill, but a flyer
Well, and it's
stating, call your representative, this is what's going on.
Yeah. Well, and the flyer, it's also promotes a petition that we have, an online petition, and if folks want to go to that, it's actually a very easy URL. It's www.nobathroombill.com. Very easy to remember if people here want to go and sign that. But also the flyers direct people to call their representative, as you said. And I think your state rep is Susan Gifford, right? Is that who do you?
Mine would be
here?
Vinnie DiMacedo.
Oh, the state senator, but the state rep, I think is
Randy Hunt.
Oh, Randy Hunt. Okay,
and,
great.
Dave Vieira is
Dave
also
Vieira too.
a
Yep.
rep in Bourne.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think we're fairly fortunate, or very fortunate in this area, because we have representatives and senators who are more conservative and
Good.
Vote against these kinds of things.
Great.
So I believe that David and Randy are voting against it.
Excellent.
From what I've heard.
Excellent.
But it doesn't hurt to have people
everybody call them. Yeah, and
just let them know how they feel.
Yep, and the number is 617-722-2000, and they would just ask for Representative Randy Hunt and Representative Dave Vieira.
Susan Williams Gifford used to be in
that's
part
why
of
I'm
Bourne
thinking, yeah.
in the Buzzards Bay area.
Got it.
Now
okay.
They sort of redistricted, and she's
and I got to learn the new districts.
She's in
taking
Wareham.
some time.
Yeah.
It's taking some time. Yeah.
But I don't think it hurts to call any rep. Sometimes I call Jeff Deal.
Yes.
Or I'll call somebody else who I know will vote a certain way, or I'm hoping
to be encouraging and to say we appreciate you standing up for us, and working with folks to defeat this legislation or pass this legislation, depending upon your perspective. I do think it's important to call them. Yeah.
Because they're still voting, and if their vote, if they win, it affects us all. So
right.
I think it's just good to know.
Yeah, and the more encouraged they are, the more they'll stand up and object to the bill, and the more they'll, be able to explain to people, well, I heard from constituents, and they understand that this just isn't common sense, and we have to protect the safety and privacy of everyone, and that's how I'm going to vote. And I think it becomes easier for them to say that the more they hear from people.
And I think, too, we talked about that a little bit, the hate speech, that once some of these things are passed, that the hate speech is sort of included in that. So if you say anything negative, or you even bring up a topic, somebody will say, oh no, you can't say that, that's hate speech.
Yeah, I think you're seeing a lot on college campuses of this idea of, topics that are just not allowed to be discussed anymore, or this hyper political correctness with safe spaces and other topics, and it's really just it's amazing how more and more we're moving away from free speech, and it's scary. And I think you're seeing people start to, again, with things like the Target boycott and other aspects of things going on in life, starting to really reject that idea that you can't say your opinion on something as simple as not wanting men in the ladies' room.
I know I've been taking Common Core signature sheets around the last couple of weekends, and I'll say, well, this is coming down from the federal government, and then people just recently have said, oh, I've had it with that, and I've had it with this bathroom bill. So sometimes when you're taking literature around, people have no idea what's going on. Yeah. But it seems that recently more people are tuned into this bathroom bill and seem to know.
I think, like I said, the Target boycott and other places that have passed legislation one way or the other saying, either they have to be allowed into whatever restroom anybody chooses, or conversely legislation that says you should use the restroom based on your anatomy. I think all of the media attention has focused back onto the debate here in Massachusetts and in other places where it's becoming more and more of a topic that gets discussed. So.
Well, is there anything else? I know you have a website.
Oh,
if you
yeah,
want to
well,
mention that, the
yep.
Renew Mass Coalition.
Yep.
You have information on that?
renewmacoalition.org, and you can also email us at info@renewmacoalition.org. But the other one, the easiest thing to do to to get involved, to contact your legislators and to oppose this bill is to go to the really simple URL of www.nobathroombill.com.
Okay.
If you wanted to see the press conference clips, those are available on our Facebook page. It's simply facebook.com/RenewMACoalition.
Okay.
And they're also, if you search for us on YouTube, you can find them that way as well.
Great. And do you think you'll be doing more flyers in the last couple of
I'm
weeks,
not
or?
sure. I'm not sure. We'll see. We're certainly tracking the legislation. We're certainly going to do everything we can. We're running some limited radio ads to let people know that way. We're certainly going to do as much flyering as we can, phone calls, Facebook ads, everything we can to get people, to let people know that they need to call their representatives. I think some people say, oh, well, that'll never happen, or my state rep's a good guy, he'll never vote for that, and then they are aghast at how some of these folks end up voting once they start to pay attention. Even something like Common Core, to the extent they've had roll calls in the House, overwhelmingly legislators have supported Common Core when it's clear the people oppose it. And so, maybe it means we need new legislators in some places.
Yes.
But it's good to hear that the ones down here are opposed to this sort of thing.
Now, Renew Mass Coalition is a nonprofit, right?
Yep.
So you get your funding through donations?
Yep, individual donations, yep. We don't accept funds from the government or anything like that. It's private donations from predominantly grassroots activists.
So if anyone would like to give a donation to the
they
cause?
can do that through our website. That's the best way to do it. Yeah, yep.
And
all of that kind of links through with all of the URLs that I mentioned earlier. So.
And you do have an executive board?
Yes, yep.
Yep. And so you work with the executive board, and then you're sort of the director, and you carry out what the goals are?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
So if anybody else would like to donate, they may do that. What about volunteering?
And volunteering, we always need volunteers to pass out. And people can sign up through the website. We have frequent opportunities on Facebook to, share different things, to email your legislator, to call your legislator. Right now, we're running we've got a great link on our website to easily share the videos from the press conference with your legislators, so that individuals who have watched and heard, Rep. O'Connell or Kaylee Triller or any of these individuals talk about why this is a bad idea, they can easily click through and take 30 seconds and send a email with the link to the YouTube videos and send them to their own state reps. And but just based right on a person's address, it can tell them who their rep is, so that it definitely goes to the right place.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, we just have a few seconds left, so I just want to say thank you so much. I know you work with other organizations as well, because they were represented at the State House too. And thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, well, this show is also uploaded, so people from all over the state can watch it as well.
And I can share it on my Facebook page.
You
There
can.
you go. Excellent.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.